Guy I worked with today, he said that he had to do it. He felt like he had to because he has an 18-month-old baby at home, and he doesn't want it to go hungry. And being in the line of work that we're in, it's not exactly easy to replace the job that we're going to be losing.
Warning, censorship.
Canadian rail employees are essential workers. We all know that. How could they not be? They are a central, integral part of the Canadian supply chain that connects one of the largest countries on the face of the earth economically and otherwise. And these workers, they've been able to work safely for almost, 20 months of this pandemic without a vaccine. And they've been working hard to get Canadians the goods they need. But also on the flip side, to ship our products like our grain and our canola and our lumber to export ports. So why all of a sudden are these essential workers being given the immoral choice of get the COVID jab or lose their jobs? Now, the registered Canadian charity, the Democracy Fund, is funding 20 strategic lawsuits all across the country to fight these vaccine passports and vaccine workplace mandates to overturn this medical segregation coming at Canadians from both their own government, but also from their own employers. It's all being done, this fight, through a special portal, fightvaccinepassports.com. And at that website, you can see all the work being done now. You can follow our stories and make a donation that qualifies for a charitable tax receipt. Now, one of these 20 strategic litigation efforts is regarding a group of CN rail workers. Now, they began organizing themselves against the vaccine mandate in their workplace. They even got a lawyer in place. They just needed some funding to be able to take on a multi-billion-dollar government-regulated corporation like CN. That's where Fight Vaccine Passports came in. We've connected those CN workers with an incredible civil liberties lawyer named Leighton Gray. The Democracy Fund is going to finance the CN litigation. So today, you're going to meet Kyle. He's an Alberta-based worker with CN Rail who now faces unemployment and financial devastation if he doesn't bend to medical coercion before November 15th. Then you're going to meet the aforementioned great lawyer, Leighton Gray. He's a Fight Vaccine Passports lawyer with Gray, Wauck, Spencer, LLP. I'm going to ask you to get involved and help because even if you're someone who's not all that concerned with medical coercion, even if you're someone who thinks everybody should have the vaccine, I bet you are concerned about how supply chain disruptions are going to hit you at the grocery store and at the department store and in your pocketbook as we approach the Christmas season. And that's what's going to happen when CN workers get constructively fired for not getting the jab. So first, let's hear from Kyle. Kyle, how long have you been working for CN?
Just about 10 years.
And so you're a good employee, you show up on time, ready to work?
Yeah, most of the time, yeah.
I think we all have our days. Now, you are facing unpaid leave, which is basically constructive dismissal.
That's right.
If you don't get the vaccine by November 15th, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And so you guys have retained Leighton Gray, who we are helping cover the bills for through fightvaccinepassports.com. And if you at home would like to donate, at fightvaccinepassports.com. Good news, all donations there qualify for a charitable tax receipt through the registered Canadian charity, the Democracy Fund. But you guys have a great lawyer, and I think you're going to need it because I think you are running out of time with your employer. Right now, as we're filming this, it's November 3rd. You really only have 12 days left before you have to be vaccinated. Have you heard anything from your employer?
I haven't heard anything since they updated the deadline from November 1st to November 15th. Nobody's contacted me in particular, although I have heard from some other people I've talked to that they've been hounding them pretty hard about checking out the tracker and making sure that your papers are submitted to them and all that stuff.
Now, that's one thing that we should note. Leighton Gray has fired off 2 threat letters to your employer. The first one prompted them to push that date back because initially your deadline was the end of October, right?
That is correct, yeah.
Now, when you are at the job site, when you're at work, do you know of any of your fellow employees if that forced them to get the vaccine, like that they otherwise wouldn't have wanted it, but they're scared of losing their job?
Oh, for sure. I know quite a few people that have gotten it. A guy I worked with today, he said that he had to do it. He felt like he had to because he has an 18-month-old baby at home, and he doesn't want it to go hungry. And being in the line of work that we're in, it's not exactly easy to replace the job that we're going to be losing.
Now, it's been a tough, I guess, couple of years for you guys. At the beginning of the pandemic, I guess it would have been in March, there were rail stoppages because there were people just sort of camped out on the tracks for a little while there. And that hurt CN as a company. So it seems sort of remarkable now that they would be potentially risking laying off hundreds, maybe thousands of you guys. We don't really know how many of you are affected by this. We know there's a substantial amount that they would risk now disrupting supply chains after just sort of recovering from those stoppages as a company.
Well, especially at the time when we're already facing supply chain issues and labor shortages, and they sent us all out a coin that said we were essential workers last year, and now we're facing termination without any possibility of getting any kind of pay for it. It really shows you that they care, I guess,
Mm-hmm. Now, I know some of the people involved in the legal action with Leighton Gray. Some of them are unionized, some of them aren't. Are you unionized?
Yes, I am.
And your union is full vaccine passport?
Yes, they've notified me when I tried to file the grievance with them that they wouldn't be pursuing anything, and it wouldn't be about the policy that if they did do anything, it would be about the change of condition of employment to begin with. So they're not opposed to the policy; they're just opposed to the change to condition of employment.
Wow! So all those union dues, you pay every paycheck to these people, and when you actually need them for once, tumbleweeds rolling by.
That's what it seems to be, and. I realize it's hard for everybody to know how to navigate this area because it's the first time we've ever dealt with it. But, I mean, to just roll over and accept it is not acceptable, in my opinion.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question, and you don't have to answer it because it really is none of my business. And for me, that's the crux of the vaccine passport issue is it's nobody's business. But your opposition to the vaccine passport, is it medical? Is it moral? Is it religious? Are you against the coercion, or is it, some combination of all of the above? And if it's medical, you can tell me, but maybe don't give me the specifics because this is about medical privacy.
For me personally, it's a moral issue. According to our Constitution, they cannot mandate vaccinations. I don't feel it's anybody's right to try to force a drug, no matter what it is. Even if they were trying to give me aspirin for a headache, that's not their right to administer that to me. That's for my doctor, and it's nobody's business but mine and my doctor's. And I think the coercion is wrong. Essentially, you're not giving people a choice because a lot of people can't afford the test and pay for the test themselves. And that's not an alternative, in my opinion, anyways, because as we all know, you could still get and spread COVID while you're vaccinated.
Now, has CN ever mandated any other vaccinations for employees? Like, for example, are you expected to get the flu vaccine every single year as a condition of your employment?
No, I've never gotten a flu shot before, and ironically, it doesn't bar me from going anywhere.
Interesting. Now, I mentioned off the top that people at home are donating to cover the cost of your lawsuit at Fight Vaccine Passports. What does it mean to have this army of Canadians willing to stand beside you as you face unemployment because you're taking a moral stance against your employer?
Well, it gives me hope. I think the longer this goes on, more and more people are waking up to just how bad this can become, even worse so than it already is. And having people behind us, it's good. It feels good, and it reinforces my belief that we're doing the right thing and we're fighting for a good, just cause.
Yeah, I've heard from some of the other people involved in the legal action. They're just so grateful. You're fighting against a very big company and you're just the little guy and you don't have your union helping you. So, thank goodness for this army of people.
Yeah, it's great to have support because, some people don't even get support from their family in these aspects, and a guy like me, I live by myself and I don't have a savings. I don't know what I'm going to do when I lose this job and I don't have any money. I'm looking at losing my house, losing my car, how am I going to feed my kitties? Yeah. So it's just, it's a challenge, but you know what? I have to stand up for what's right, and this is what's right.
Now, do you have a message for anybody else out there who might be in the same position as you? Because this is happening in the oil patch, in transportation, in warehouses. IT workers who work at home are facing these same sorts of issues, and they're facing unemployment or violating their conscience. Do you have any advice for them?
Stand strong to your morals. We're not the minority. Most people I know are against the mandates. They just don't want to take the bullet and lose their job. Just stand up and do it. Do it. It's what you guys need to do. Look at what happened in Quebec with pushing the deadline back and getting rid of the mandates now, because they all stood up and stood together. We are strong and we are the majority, and we will win this if we all stand together.
Okay, now here's Leighton with an update.
I've advised people where they're represented by a union to claim the grievance and push the grievance, because if the unions are under a contractual obligation under the collective bargaining agreements, it's actually a fiduciary obligation to deal with the workers in good faith, because the workers have contracted their rights to bargain with the employer to the union under the contract. And so that places, in my opinion, a duty on the union to advance these grievances in good faith so that they can be adjudicated according to law. And that, strangely, is not happening in some cases.
So tell us what's been done so far for the CN workers.
Well, the CN group has really, really grown quickly. And it's important to note that with those particular workers, some of them are unionized, some of them are not. The ones who are unionized are members of different types of unions. I mentioned the steel workers. And then we also have with CN not only the workers, but the private contractors who are connected to CN, providing goods and services. And they're being treated in just the same arbitrary, dehumanizing way, where they're being told, look, unless you do this, unless you comply, we don't even employ you. We don't control what you do. You have your own business. But unless you become one of us, unless you do what we tell you to, we're not even going to do business with you. We're going to cancel our contract with you. So this group has really grown exponentially to the point where I believe there are over 200 affected persons across various unions, various types of workers and businesses who provide services to CN. What's happened there is, as you know, because Rebel published it, there was the letter, the cease and desist letter. Originally, the deadline was the 15th of October. We received a very polite letter from the CEO of the company, and then they moved back the deadline to the November the 15th. This is a loss of a job based upon human rights violations, and it's not just Canadian law. And we would argue, because CN is so closely connected with the Canadian government, in fact, they're a federally regulated company, that the Charter of Canadian Rights and Freedoms is triggered. Some of your viewers might not be aware of this, but the Charter is only triggered by government action. However, the scope of that definition is pretty broad. The Supreme Court of Canada has said where there's a degree of control that's exercised over a company, generally that threshold can be met. So CN would have to contend with the Charter and not just applicable human rights codes in various provinces. And of course, with CN, we're talking about workers who are involved in different provinces. And for that reason, if legal action were necessary, because we're talking about a national corporation, we would likely sue them in the Federal Court of Canada Trial Division. I neglected to mention with CN that we do plan to file to serve them with a follow-up letter, a follow-up that will contain a SharePoint package that I described, which will contain some information about COVID-19, about the vaccines and the risks of them. So we plan to do that in the next few days because we haven't heard from them to sort of poke the bear. So that would be our next step. And then depending on what they do on November 15th, we'll follow that with either litigation or ideally, if we can get into some form of negotiation with them about some other more rational, commonsensical, and very practical ways to deal with COVID-19, short of the very prejudicial step of essentially terminating hundreds and hundreds of employees and workers.
And I'm happy to see that Layton's efforts against CN Rail are paying off. They have blinked. And as Layton points out, the Ontario and Quebec governments, they've decided to blink too, to no longer be responsible for the firing of hundreds, maybe thousands of healthcare workers. But there's so much work left to do. And Kyle remains up against a multi-billion-dollar company. He and his fellow CN Rail employees are willing to take a moral stand. And you can stand with them too. If you can, please donate at fightvaccinepassports.com and give Kyle and his fellow CN Rail employees the resources to be able to fight for their jobs. And all donations at Fight Vaccine Passports qualify for a charitable tax receipt from the registered Canadian charity, the Democracy Fund. Thank you. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. If you'd like to help Kyle and his fellow CN Rail employees stand up against the vaccine mandate in their workplace and hang on to their jobs, please consider donating at fightvaccinepassports.com, and all donations there qualify for a charitable tax receipt through the registered Canadian charity, the Democracy Fund.